Greetings. Welcome to the Thousand Stories podcast. This one is going to be a little bit different today, kind of taking a risk here, and we're going to see how it plays out. Ultimately, so much of a risk that I'm reading some of the intro thoughts that I put together from a script here, and I've never done that before, so please bear with me as I read the script here. But on this episode, we are doing something different in the hopes that we can illustrate a critical component to the work being done to transform huge systems in government. The format of this episode is a risk that I hope pays off by sharing publicly the work that the agency is pursuing in utilizing human-centered design to rebuild a complex system that served about a third of the state's population last year. I also hope to share the team's commitment in building a world-class customer experience through this human-centered design. In my time in human services, it was clear that these massive systems have been developed over time to serve communities in need. However, they really weren't informed by the communities that they were intended to serve. For 2 years, I've been talking about building a foundation for large-scale system reform that will allow us to completely overhaul the system with the intent of building it and rebuilding it around the person we're trying to serve, and truly embracing the voice of the customer in that overhaul. For 2 years, we've been laying this foundation, including the development of what we call the True North, which is sort of a grassroots strategic planning process that elevates our priorities and values above all else. This allowed us to build a culture that places the person we serve at the center of our system. In the last few weeks, we've added a 9th agency-wide True North philosophy, in addition to the other 8 that we have held core for the last 2 years. This new one is building a world-class customer experience that truly illustrates the value we place in the people we serve. We are structuring the organization and developing internal tools and expertise to take action in ensuring that both the in-person and digital engagement experience rivals that of public sector leaders like Chick-fil-A and Southwest Airlines. Admittedly, the scale and complexities of our systems will always be a barrier to a consistent and excellent experience for our customers, but we are publicly committed to executing on this strategy because our friends and neighbors and communities across Oklahoma deserve it. 2 concepts are intended to be shared here today. The first is that OKDHS is striving to build this concept of an aligned, world-class customer experience. The second is a deeper message that at all levels of the organization, we're building a culture of system reform that starts with human-centered design. We intend to illustrate how human-centered design works in a single experience, but it should be noted that human-centered design isn't a single conversation, nor is this conversation with a handful of people the sole source of input to build this world-class customer experience. This conversation is an example of one component of the overall framework of a continuum of human-centered design that will be taking over the Oklahoma Department of Human Services. The human-centered design continuum being developed at OKDHS includes a wide variety and a wide range of experiences that includes providing the tools necessary in a single meeting, in a small group in an office somewhere in remote reaches of Oklahoma. If that group wants to rebuild a small process or a system, we will provide them the tools necessary to do so. It also ranges all the way over to a large, full-scale, 16-week human-centered design deep dive that brings together the voices of the team, the community, and the people we serve into a structured dialogue that might even lead to the development of new technology serving the customer with greater efficiency and effectiveness. This really is very exciting work, and the outcome of the process should yield a much better understanding of the needs of the people we serve and a transformed human services system. In this human-centered design sprint that we're going to be working on today, we will actually be working as a team to define the characteristics of a world-class customer experience so that we can integrate that experience and that insight into physical locations all over the state of Oklahoma, including not only the agency's existing footprint, but also in our new modern real estate strategy that has recently been announced. OKDHS has announced that we will be embarking upon a modernization of our existing real estate footprint to better serve the needs of our community. As such, in towns and cities all over Oklahoma, the agency will be trading large administrative buildings in favor of multiple, smaller, strategically located and thoughtfully designed locations. For example, in one community, there may be a 32,000 square foot building that's been suffering from deferred maintenance for decades. There may or may not be a bunch of stories about snakes falling from this hypothetical building ceiling over the years and long-term plumbing issues that haven't been resolved for generations. In my first visit to this building, I may have been immediately struck by the message this sent to our team and to those that we serve as to what the state actually thinks about the value they have in our society. That message is not acceptable to me and our team, and we are committed to changing it. Further, the space no longer fits the need of our workforce, as so many are at least or as more productive serving remotely a majority of their week. The future in this community, as it pertains to this 32,000 square foot building, involves trading the property over time for a series of 3 additional types of replacement properties in the same community. The first we call a retail space, which really closely resembles a bank branch, and it allows in-person engagement for those we serve that cannot, for whatever reason, meet us through remote means. The second is an administrative hub, which allows the workforce to meet to satisfy the in-person needs of our team, including functions like employee onboarding, team meetings, team member mentorship, and other human resources functions. The third property type is specifically designed as a trauma-informed and hope-centered child welfare space that allows for the best level of service for children and families at all hours and for family team meetings and visitations. The purpose of this episode of this podcast is to illustrate the potential use of human-centered design as the first step in building a world-class customer experience for a modern physical human services real estate footprint. It also allows for us to share with the world that human-centered design will be the anchor for everything we do going forward. And I believe it is the first step for any large-scale, huge system transformation and reform. So we've got a whole team joining today, and I'm excited about introducing them to you here in a moment. Please, we are early in this process, so give us some grace as we explore this discussion together. The tools that we will use, the questions that we will ask are all in draft form, so we're taking a risk by putting this out to the public, but we really just want to illustrate and articulate that this is the heart of human services going forward and really the opportunity for us to transform systems in massive ways. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you for joining us today on the 1,000 Stories podcast. I have a few notes that I wanted to share before we get started. The first is a reminder that today's meeting is just one meeting in a much larger effort. It's isolated to a specific topic, which is the in-person social safety net engagement experience. Future steps in this project involve much deeper stakeholder representation, including focus groups, surveys, and direct conversations. This division within OKDHS we call the Adult and Family Services Division. They served more than 1 million Oklahomans last year, about a quarter of the state's population. So the impact of true transformation in this space is incredible to our communities. One of the purposes behind human-centered design in this particular conversation is to build empathy for those that engage in these huge systems to ensure that these systems really understand the impact on their communities themselves. We should all be anchored in a joint mission to build a world-class customer experience for those that we serve, knowing that many times when people engage with the Oklahoma Department of Human Services in a county office, they come on the worst day of their lives, which is the day they ask for help. some of the participants in this episode have experience with human-centered design and some do not. So we appreciate your grace and understanding in working through that. The attempt today is to identify the most common likely experience for our persona, which is a hypothetical human being that we will create together in front of you today. But it is important to note that once this common experience is determined through human-centered design, it then allows us to build the system for much more, and it's a flexible system for much more uncommon or extreme experiences. So we're able to adapt what we learn here today to other types of folks who engage. So with that, I'm going to say hello to our team. We'll spend some time off camera or maybe on camera in other space, identifying who we are and introducing ourselves. But I want you all to know this should be a full participation exercise. Everyone is invited because you bring specific experiences or a certain voice to the conversation. And so please participate. Also, please make sure to leave space for others to participate as well. Try to expand on your thoughts some so that the audience that's listening can get a greater understanding of the context that you're trying to bring. You are certainly free to be direct in this conversation. If there's a space in which there are some things that are not all that great to hear, we are definitely in a space where vulnerability is okay for the agency, and you are welcome to share experiences, whether you've had them or you've just heard about them. That's fine too. You all hopefully by this point know our hearts and know that we are here for true transformation. This will probably go much faster than we would like it to go, so I would like to reiterate that this is one meeting in dozens of meetings on this specific topic. So if we don't elevate a specific voice or forget something, it's okay. There are lots of other venues to bring that up. I want to also say thank you for this experience. This is going to be, well, it's interesting. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if it's good. Who knows? And then also understand that we will probably be making assumptions and talking a lot about assumptions. So there's a lot of danger in that. But the future stages of human-centered design do involve lots of stakeholder engagement. So we get into specifics around individual human beings through the process. So with that, we will go ahead and get started. I wanted to start with one initial question. And that question is, I'm going to ask you to name an organization that you believe has provided or provides world-class customer experience. Anchor us in what that looks like for you. So an organization and then maybe one or two characteristics around that organization that of somebody that provides world-class customer experience. Anybody can go.
No one is going yet. I would say Chick-fil-A. We all love Chick-fil-A's customer service. We love how they greet us when we're in the drive-thru. They have a good product, but they know what they do well, and they stick to that. They know that they do chicken well. They stick to that. I don't know who taught them how to make mac and cheese specifically, but they do that well as well. But they stick to their core values. They stick to what they know. And they just work towards perfection and excellence with that. Not just with their customers, but with their employees. Their employees get to buy stock in their organizations. Their employees get to buy Chick-fil-A franchises, those types of things. So they're not just bought in within their community and the people that they serve, but they're bought in within their workers as well.
Great, thank you. Who else?
So I'm just going to add to Chick-fil-A because I think there's one other thing that I just am really impressed with Chick-fil-A, and that's the way they will turn to the community when there's a crisis or an emergency of some kind. You'll see them step forward and serve meals and things like that. So they not only focus on their customers and employees, but they care about their community.
Okay, thank you. Any other organizations besides Chick-fil-A?
I'll throw Zappos out there, the shoe company.
Okay.
I very much admire the way that they meet their customer where the customer wants to be met. You call them on the phone. There is no automated answering machine because the best customer experience is with a human. They don't offshore any of that work. They make sure that the phone's being answered by the same communities of people where the phone calls are coming from. So as they went global, they opened up places everywhere. You can text them. They went so far as for their gamers, you can reach them on a Discord server. So you can actually reach out to customer service in a game server if you want. So I just like the way they've really went out and met people where they are.
I'd like to add to that because I was thinking of Zappos also. They actually select their employees based on the culture that they want to build internally. And it was one of the greatest stories I've heard that during their interview process, after they pick up the individual, drop them back off at the airport, they actually interview the receptionists and those that the person passed to see how they interacted with the people that would be considered not as important to impress.
Wow.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay. Anybody else have any other organizations they'd like to elevate to this? Zappos, Chick-fil-A, any others?
I'll say Starbucks.
Great.
I worked there for almost 8 years because of how they treated their employees. We had stock options. We also had insurance benefits. We got a free pound of coffee a week. And we also had tuition reimbursement. So a lot of people don't realize the benefits of working for Starbucks. And we got paid very well. So you got, as college students, making $12 an hour, that says something.
They also care about my dog. You know, when you go through a
Get
drive-through
your
and
puppy
they give,
down.
yes.
And that carries to the
Yeah.
to the customers because
Yeah.
if you're treating your employees well, your customers will also get treated well.
Yeah.
So interestingly, I've heard a number of comments about employees and taking care of employees first results in better service. Deb, did you have something you want to share?
Yeah, I was going to say Walt Disney, particularly Disney World. And the thing that I think about with Disney World is that I went there over a 20-year period of time a couple of times, and it always looked the same. I was so impressed at the physical environment of how it was always painted. It was always clean. There were, it literally was like stepping back into time to go 20 years later. And you sort of have this memory of when you're a kid and you go. And the importance of sort of everyone needing to contribute to paying attention to that built environment is something that I think is really important at Disney.
You know, another thing that comes to mind on Disney is, so I've only been once with my family, but we were there and it felt like we had a personalized custom experience. And there were 100,000 other people there on that day in those parks. And it felt like each one of those people had their own customized experience. It's really pretty incredible.
We actually had an experience where one of the members of our party got sick and called their main number to inquire about how to access a local physician, like the best place to go, because we weren't familiar with the area. And they said, "What is it you need?" And they actually said, "If you'll meet us at your hotel room, we'll send someone." They sent a healthcare provider to our hotel.
Wow, that's pretty incredible. Great. Any other thoughts before we move to the next exercise? All right. The wonders of technology. Okay, so now we're going to take some time, now that we've sort of anchored in what a good customer experience is, we're going to now move into the creation of a persona. And in the context of human-centered design, we want to build systems around a human being, a person. And when we're having conversations like this, it's tough to bring a person in. And, obviously there's imposition. There are barriers in place for people who engage in our systems to engage on a regular basis here in our world. So you build a set of personas. And in a perfect world, you would use common personas across in state government, across agencies. So when we talk about what happens with SNAP, we could also use the same personas, and maybe one we develop here today could be used for unemployment at OESC someday, or for the health department as that persona engages there. So what we're going to do is build a hypothetical person here. Again, we're going to try to do it in sort of two ways. We're going to talk about demographics, just sort of physically who they are and that sort of thing. But then we're also going to talk a little bit about psychographics. It's this concept of what their goals are and what they who they want to be and what they want to do, because the people that we engage with, we know that we are pathways for them to be. If you're a hope-centered organization, which we are, you know that the things that we provide are actual hope, are pathways for them to be successful. So we need to know what success is for them and how they define success. So I'm going to ask a series of questions about that. First, let's just start talking about basics. Can somebody start just describing a human being that would walk into a DHS county office? We need age, we need race, we need gender, we need kids, we need all of that stuff. So tell me, somebody jump in and give me some characteristics. There is no wrong answer. This is a hypothetical person. I'm going to start with this person is 35 years old. Okay.
I was going to say 28.
Okay, 28 years old. Good. Well,
Her name's Julie.
Julie.
Yeah, we did Frank last time, so let's
We
do
did Frank.
Yeah.
Okay.
Interesting.
So she's 28. Whoops. Oh man, this cast on my finger is getting in the way of typing. Okay, Julie's 28. Is she from the neighborhood? I assume she's from nearby. Yep. So fill some more out. Who's got some more? Come on, Clarence. Where is
Latina.
She is Latina. Okay. Okay. Oops. Latina. Sorry. She has kids. Yes.
Yes.
Yes, two.
2 kids and ages and names, please. Names and ages.
4 and 6.
4 and 6.
I'll let someone else do that.
Someone give me a name.
Alex.
Okay. Alex, and that's the 4-year-old boy named Alex, and 6-year-old. What's a 6-year-old name?
Brandon. Oh, just kidding.
What is it?
You're going to give her a girl?
Alexis. I love it
My default is that women only have boy children.
because that's all you have. Yes, I understand. Okay, so that's her children. Does she have family living nearby?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. And what kind of family? Just adults? Does she have siblings?
She has grandparents living nearby.
Okay. Great.
28
grandparents, not parents.
No, grandparents.
Grandparents, her
With her?
grandparents. Great.
Do you think? With her or just nearby?
Oh, with her.
So her grandparents live with her. She has 2 kids and both grandparents
And
living
both.
under the same household. Okay.
Yes.
Great. So grandparents, and then what other types of support, family support network is around?
I think she doesn't have much support. I think she's the one that sort of supports her grandparents. So it's really more like having 4 children.
I agree. Okay, I love it. So she has 2 kids, Alex and Alexis. They all live together with grandparents who she also supports for the most part. Does Julie have a job today? She does. What does she do?
I think she has 2 jobs.
Yeah,
I
has
think
two.
she has 2 jobs too.
What are those jobs?
I think she works at Famous Footwear.
Okay.
I actually imagine that she lives in these apartments off of 240 and Walker.
Okay.
So that's where
So
she
we
lives.
know
And there's
exactly
a
where
Famous
she lives?
Footwear that you could walk to.
Okay, great. So she works at Famous Footwear, and then she also works where?
At the school that she attends because she's a student as well.
Great. And so she's a student. She's getting a
Correct.
higher.
Associates
Okay.
at OCCC.
Great.
I'm cheering for Julie.
Oh,
I like
too.
her already.
And so she works at the school that she attends because that helps with her tuition, as well as she has a part-time job that supplements income.
Great. Okay, so she works, 2 kids at home, grandparents also under the same roof. She is the primary breadwinner for everyone. There may be some other odd jobs here and there. Excuse me.
Well,
Not a good time for a cough.
The grandparents have supplemental income, but they don't have full salaries, but they have services and supplemental income that help make ends meet,
Okay.
which is why they're all sharing their resources by collectively living under one roof.
Makes sense to me. What if you were to ask Julie what her long-term goals are? What would she answer?
She wants to buy a house.
Yeah, she wants a backyard for her kids.
Mm-hmm.
Something that's handicap accessible as well, with the larger doors and ramps instead of stairs, because the apartment is not feasible for or conducive for living of our aging population or kids as they grow.
I'm going to say she's going to school to be a nurse.
Nurse, yeah.
Yep.
OCCC has a really good 2-year nursing program, but it's hard to get in.
So she wants to get her associates and then probably transfer up to UCO for nursing school.
You actually can be a nurse
You
just
can
at
get your RN there.
OCCC. Yeah, that's right.
She can be an RN
Even
in
better.
that program.
Great. So success for her is continuing to support her family while she's in school, but long term become a nurse and own a home that is conducive to her family. Great.
I think she's also trying to get her kids raised in a safe environment and in a way that sets them up for success. So she's worried about the next 10 or 12 years setting them up for their adulthood.
And what school system they're going to. Where does she want to buy this home, that location of that home that she wants to purchase? Is it in the same area? Is it in a different area? So that the school system that her kids are going to are setting them up for success as well.
And I would say
Great.
her challenge is that her grandparents don't speak English well. The mother speaks a little bit better English, and so she has difficulty having them step in her place to help her children get their education and do homework.
Okay, very good. Thank you. So now Julie is our persona. We will work to fill this persona out a little bit as we move along. But now the purpose is to think about Julie and her engagement with the Oklahoma Department of Human Services. So at some point, there was an awareness for Julie, an awareness of the services potentially offered by DHS. So in a full human-centered design, we would talk about her starting with zero level of awareness. She has no idea what DHS does. She knows she has identified that there's food security issues in her home, potentially housing insecurity as well, and now she needs help. So we would talk about how she comes to understand that that OKDHS is a potential solution for her. Here we don't necessarily have that time to do that. So we're going to launch into that engagement. So I want to know when she walks in the door, and some of our DHS subject matter experts can maybe answer some of these, but I would like everybody to think about this. What happens, we're talking about what happens when she walks in the door. So who meets her for the first time when she walks in the door of her first county office?
She's going to be greeted by an administrative technician 3, which is a DHS personnel classification for the people that work the front desk at an office.
Well, that's not really true. Depending on what office she goes to, she may be greeted by somebody who's making sure that she doesn't have any weapons
Also,
and is safe to even come inside. And she's got those babies in tow, so that's a job in and of itself.
So it might be a metal detector. At the very least, it's a plexiglass window that someone has to open to speak to you through.
Okay, so it's either security through a metal detector or an AT3 who is there likely on the other side of a glass window. So let's say she's made it through security. That was the experience that we could all imagine going through security when you've done nothing wrong. But you're now at the window. What does she have to say? No, actually, let's take a step back. What does it feel like for Julie when she walks in, whether it's security, but what does the average typical person feel when they walk in to a DHS office today?
Are you asking specifically that she's greeted by security, or specifically that she's met by this AT3?
Yeah, let's say she's walking through a metal detector of some sort. There is a security component on the front end that is more likely than being met even by somebody on the other side of a glass window.
you're kind of frustrated when you're walking in. If you're trying to get 2 kids out the car, out of car seats, it's hot outside. You're walking into an office, you have bags in tow, because 9 times out of 10 they have a backpack or snacks or something to entertain them while you're coming in for a meeting. And you need something to keep them quiet. So you have your purse and your stuff and their stuff, and then you have to set all of that stuff down to go through this metal detector that you could be going off just because you got to take these keys out of your pocket and your phone out of your pocket and all of those different things. So just kind of a sense of frustration of getting through that whole process, because it is the holdup, the barrier that is between getting to you and what you need.
Definitely a level of frustration.
I think she's also very worried because she's supposed to be at work at a certain time, and so she has no idea what to expect as far as the experience and how she's gonna. Is it going to be a 30-minute stay? Is it going to be a 2-hour stay? She has no idea. So trying to think through, how do I get to work on time and get my kids to a safe place? I think she's really worried and anxious because she doesn't know what this is going to be like.
I'd say she's also really nervous because this is government, and you know, there's a lot of distrust sometimes with government and kind of putting yourself out there to make yourself available for services.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing, just more from like a mom standpoint. I think she's probably anxious. Kids are pretty unpredictable, and you're in the space where people take away your children. And so having to go into that, and now a spotlight's on you and how you parent for maybe the first time would be really intimidating.
I'm thinking about the fact that she's going in and she's wondering in this impersonal experience, are you thinking the worst of me or the best of me? And am I inconvenienced, or are you wanting to serve me? And for me, as a minority, a black male, a lot of that gets communicated through the greeting or the lack of a greeting. Or someone asking me my name, good morning, how are you? And even that very tone, just your keys, take the metal out, don't worry about the kids. Just putting someone at ease, understanding their situation, that first greeting makes it easy to fill out whatever else is next. And sometimes it comes from the security guards. Actually, I will say at our state capitol, there's some security guards, and when I walk around the door, I see the uniform, walk around the corner, I see the uniform. It's that greeting that hits me first that makes me want to know, what are you imagining when you see me? That greeting is what I hear, what I listen for.
She might also be wondering, especially if you're going through that metal detector, is this a safe place? Because many places I go don't have to have a metal detector. So if this place has to have a metal detector, then why is that? What's about this building that makes it unsafe?
That's a great point. 'Cause I think the other thing that she may be feeling, whether she notices or not, but just the general, you have walked into an institution at any one of our county offices today. You feel it. You smell it. The fluorescent lights flicker. Things are broken. It looks, to your point, it looks like you should be concerned, and for a whole bunch of reasons, but it feels institutional.
Yeah, regardless of the personnel that greets you and the manner in which they greet you, the built environment that you're walking into is not at all a welcoming and inviting place. It feels very bureaucratic. It just doesn't feel hospitable at all.
As a dad, I want to throw this in. If I have my children with me, as soon as I walk in there, I'm scanning the place to see if my children are going to be an inconvenience, or if they prepared a safe, clean space, a video with cartoons or something like that, so that they can engage, or am I going to be tensely trying to keep them, busy and not in the way?
No, that was going to be my next statement, because if we know that primarily at these DHS offices that people are coming to get services not only for themselves but their families and their children, are we creating that space that says your whole family is welcome? Whether it's seniors, whether it's kids, what about this space says we're all welcome here.
Wonderful. All right. So thank you for all that. Next question is, Julie and her kids are now through security. We've sort of identified a lot of those feelings that she's engaged or that are sort of inside of her. She walks up to a window. Is there a line for her? Is there a line to get to meet that AT3? So, Austin, any thoughts on that? I see you want to respond.
I'm thinking of a very specific office, and if Julie is going to OCCC, she's probably walking into the Capitol Hill office.
Yep.
Would be my bet. And there's going to be a pretty good likelihood that there are going to be several people in that lobby. There may be a line, but either way, there will be a queue of some sorts.
So let's say she has to wait in a line for a second. She engages with the AT3. What does that first sentence or statement have to be? What does Julie say for the first time to somebody that she thinks she needs to talk with to help her?
Well, she's well mannered. She's gonna greet them as well as them greet her because she is aspiring to do better, be better. She's already carrying herself with a certain level of respect and self-respect because she wants to ascend to do better in life. So she's going to greet them. She's going to be polite. She works at an educational institution. She's well-spoken. She speaks very clear English. There's no language barrier. She speaks it. She understands it. So she's going to say hello. And these are the services that I need, because 9 times out of 10, if she's coming and she knows she has a short amount of time and she has her kids in tow, she's already researched everything that she's coming to this office to ask for so that she can get through it as quickly as possible.
Interesting you should say that. Just our research says they typically come for just one thing, despite possibly being eligible for others. They come in like, no, this is the help I need. So your point is very well made.
So she walks up to the window. She's prepared. She knows she's there for, what is she there for? Most likely it's SNAP. Yeah, food stamps is what she's there for. So she walks up to the window and she says, what? Who wants to give me that first sentence?
Well, I would say the first question is the receptionist is probably going to speak first, and it's going to be, what can I help you with? And just in that, there could be, depending on, we'll say, Julie is confident, Julie has, so she'll say, well, I'm here to, apply for food stamps. And, then it's going to be, is a paper application going to be then just immediately handed to her? And then she, just sort of has that bewildered, like, what am I doing with this? And so she, it's probably going to be a little bit overwhelming when she just first sort of handed this and said, okay, go fill this out.
So it immediately turns into a transaction.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Well, also, are we in the age of COVID? Because she may have that electronic application already
done and ready there. Let's suggest this is pre-COVID for the purpose of the rest of this conversation. Our intent here is to transform for the long term, and I know all of us hope that we will be out of this COVID situation sometime. So now we've said that she engages. She's asked what she needs. She says, I need to apply for food stamps. Let's say she's given the application just for argument's sake. She then goes and sits in a bank of chairs, with is probably my nemesis. I hate the banks of chairs that are sitting there, and there are 800 chairs in one room, and there are 3 people spread out. But so she goes and sits in a chair and starts working on this. How long does it take her to fill out this application?
At least 10, 15 minutes.
Okay, 10, 15 minutes. Kids are everywhere. Is there something for the kids to do?
No.
Okay, nothing for the kids to do. And this is a value, Austin, you're bringing value because you're thinking about a specific DHS office, so I love that. We are trying to find an average or typical experience, and I think that is a typical experience.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so there's nothing to do for the kids. It's 15 minutes to fill out the application. She goes and returns it to the desk, the AT3. There may or may not be a queue. What happens when that person receives that application back? When the AT3 gets the application from Julie that she has, let's say she's completely filled it out. There's nothing else that needs to be done.
Well, we're going to ask her for some verification documents.
Mm-hmm.
Eric, I may be off base here, but we're going to ask her for pay stubs. We're going to ask her for some sort of documentation to verify how much she pays in rent. And then we're going to ask her a few other questions about what resources she may have.
Yep. And do you believe she knew about that ahead of time?
No.
Okay.
And we're also going to probably first thing say, do you have some sort of identification?
Yeah.
But she may have known some of that.
Yeah, I was like, I
Because
disagree.
I'm sure her college friends told her you needed at least these few things to get you in the door.
Well, and if she's coming for that one specific thing, she's done her research to look up some of those things.
Odds are she'll have some of it. She will be surprised by a couple of them.
Mm-hmm.
Also, highly likely that it won't be enough. It won't be the right thing. We
She
brought
may
a
bring-
thing, but it's not the thing.
She may bring a pay stub, but not 4
Yes.
weeks of them.
The last 30 days, like you just brought in, you got paid the day before, bringing that pay stub, and they're like, okay, well that's great, but we also need the 2 before that.
She also has 2 jobs, so this is right.
Yeah.
It makes it twice as hard.
Okay. So she's got some identification or some documentation she needs to provide. Let's suggest that she has that. She has everything. It's however unlikely that is. Let's suggest that she does. She's super well prepared. Maybe she called ahead, figured out what she needs. She's got it all. Now what happens?
Well, if we have all of that verification, we are going to scan it and upload it into, is it workflow?
Yeah.
Okay.
The system.
Yeah, so it'll go into the DHS case management system.
Who does that? Like the front desk person does
Yes.
it, or they connect
Yeah,
with the caseworker?
so we'll have a scanner right there at the front desk area where they're going to upload copies of everything you brought in. We'll create a case number for you.
That's how it's done now.
Yes.
Is there's a scanner at the front desk?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, if we took paper, we probably would have sent you to the kiosk to have you do it online, but I didn't want to mess up your flow. Probably we wouldn't have given them a piece of paper. We would have said, go, and there's probably 10 kiosks, and probably 4 of them work at Capitol Hill.
There's 9 of them.
5
and
of the
5
9.
of them work.
I'm pretty close. There's a certain number. If you can't tell, there's
More
odds.
barriers.
Absolutely.
Oddly enough, when you say there's nothing for the kids to do, I think Capitol Hill's one of them. There's things on all the broken ones that say don't let your kids play on them. And if you look at the ones that work, they're almost always full with kids on them. So there are things for kids to do, break the kiosks. But yeah, they probably would have went to the kiosk, and at that point, she probably would have gotten stuck at some point and had to ask for help to do all these things. And so in real life, it probably would have been back and forth a couple times while she attempted to do it online, not a paper.
Does she have to wait in line every time she has a question from the kiosk back to the front desk?
On a busy day, yes.
On a busy day, yes, because the person who is working the front desk is also going to be handling the incoming phone calls. Usually we have 2 to 3 people at some of the larger offices, but
He said this is a non-COVID world. Yes, that office is full.
Okay.
Non-COVID, pre-COVID
either
world,
way,
that
it's
office
gonna
is
be,
full. Yeah.
there's going to be a lot going on in the front area of this office.
And there isn't anyone floating near the kiosk, because I know when I go to the airport,
Yes.
if I just see someone floating, I'm going closest to where they are so I can keep it moving.
I know in some offices there are, to answer that question, there's a position referred to as a CARS that's a sort of an out there in the lobby sort of position. So it does exist. I would suggest that is not the typical experience. Okay, so again, we're suggesting she has all the documentation. She's gone through, whether she's filled it out on the kiosk and had to go back and forth, or the person helped her. Is there a point in which she moves beyond the lobby to transition to another space for interviews? What's the sort of next big stage in this engagement?
If she had everything and went all the way through the program at Capitol Hill, could she have been scheduled for an interview the same day? They have caseworkers on site ready to do it that same day if it's non-emergency?
Yes, so depending on which DHS office you walk into right now, they're going to have what's called a worker of the day. And that person is basically on call to provide, great
Julie.
Okay, Julie, we got all your verification. We've scanned it. We've uploaded it. We need you to go into this interview room. There's going to be a telephone. This interview room that you walk into is just going to be white walls, nothing else in it. And we're going to tell you that in a couple of minutes that phone is going to ring. And that's going to be a AFS caseworker calling you to do your interview right there on the spot.
So 2 things you should know about that. One, that's what would happen if there was any sort of emergency. If she came in and said, like, no, we have no food in the house, that would happen every time. I have doubts as to whether that would happen in an office. I think more than likely she would get told, in a busy office where I only have 1 or 2 workers doing that, someone will call you back in 2 days. I think that's the most likely. Now, to follow through with this, though, if Julie, maybe she was very articulate, she made a friend, right? Because this matters in this space, and someone said, yeah, I'm going to get you in, we're going to get you taken care of today. If you wanted to go forward, that might happen. But I do think it's important. I think the most likely outcome in this case is that she would get told, thank you very much. Someone will call you back in 2 days. And then we would interview them, which, by the way, the interview is the exact questions that you just filled out. You now get to do them verbally. So I think likely she's going to have to go home for a couple days. And
So-
someone's going to call her back.
A couple of things. Okay, so to take the first scenario where she went into the office and got the interview, does she get to bring her kids, or does she have to leave them?
Nope, kids.
Okay. Kids can come.
Better or worse, they stay with you the whole time through. Yeah.
And then 2, outside of that, is it frustrating whether I'm in here doing this interview or I'm over the phone doing this interview because somebody called me back, that I'm being asked those same exact questions? Why? Because we're hungry and we're going to need food and we need these services, and I've already taken off of work, or I'm here a certain amount of time before I have to go back to work to do this interview, and I've given you what you need and what you asked for because I did my research or I did my homework or I made a friend and knew some of these details ahead of time. So why are you asking me again these things, these questions that I've already answered verbally? Can I not go to the next step because this is something that is needed for me to take care of my family, and I don't know how many days left of food we have?
Why are we doing it on a
Do
phone
what?
in an office? Like, is the person who's on the other end of the phone in the building?
So, by the way, in a pre-COVID world, there may have been more workers there. This has really been brought up, how they handle it for when there isn't a worker in the location.
Okay.
And this is their answer to make sure that every person that comes in gets served so that they can use those support
Gotcha.
centers to do it via the phone. And
Okay.
they, by the way, it's different at different county offices. So, again, we're describing this one situation here. As you move into other places, it's done a little differently in different places, what we've learned.
Which concerns me that it's being done differently in different places, because to me, if we already know we have a major and dire need on our south side for our south community, what does that look like for our Black people in the Black community? What does that look like for our indigenous community that may need some assistance? What does that look like for even our just lower underserved people who have to figure out how to get somewhere? What does that look like for them? And to me, it doesn't sound like it's going to be anything that they're going to have any type of positive experience with, just from hearing all the barriers we got with Julie. And this is an halfway educated young lady.
I agree to a very large extent that the experience, my next question was, does she leave with her needs resolved?
No.
And the answer in most cases, so we're trying to define the typical case, is no. Maybe in a day or two because of workloads. You know, it's important to point out that 1 million people a year roll through this system. So it's difficult to share workloads with 30-year-old technology, which is what we use in this space. So that's why this conversation is critical, because you have to align this in-person experience with a technology that enables strong service and sharing of workloads in times of limited resources, so, or of high demand. So you're right, in communities of high need, typically the workload would be the manpower, the actual employees would be shifted to that space. But that's an inefficient system as well, because there's not sufficient technology to share workload. So this conversation is informing a very dramatic transformation of the in-person experience as well as an aligned digital experience as well. All has to work together. So, but your points are absolutely right. There's no question. So she does not get her needs met on site. It takes a couple of days. So I think we've all illustrated some pretty significant issues in the in-person experience. One thing that we haven't elevated, that we haven't talked about, is every experience that I've had, and this is my experience, the director of the agency walking into an office, so it may be different, and you all will have insight, is that the people there, the workforce, are very, very positive and well-intentioned. I mean, they do their very best to help Julie. You know, if she needs help with the kiosk, they're working with kids. They are absolutely hamstrung by awful technology, by the built environment around them that is the chairs lined up and the broken kiosks and all of that stuff. So we have to make sure. Well, I mean, I believe that to be true, and I'm getting a lot of head nods that the people who work in the spaces are just as frustrated by the experience as the customers. So that's why it's incumbent upon all of us to fix the rest of that experience for them. So, okay. So one thing we didn't, so now we've walked Julie all the way through the existing experience or through the current state of what's happening in this office. One thing that we didn't talk about, and so now let's transition into the way it should be, the way the experience should be. I heard all transaction sorts of things. Like you fill out this form, you go to the kiosk, you provide us this documentation. I heard nothing about sort of a holistic picture of Julie as a human being. We built her out. Grandparents, I mean, in theory, in my opinion, the person that she engages with, one, has sufficient technology and time to talk with Julie about what her needs truly are. Yes, you came for SNAP, but I see you have 2 kids. One of them is childcare eligible, 4 years old, right? So you should, that child, do you need childcare subsidy? You know, how are you caring for a kid when you go to work? Tell me about grandparents that live at home, right? So they need to look at the whole picture. So to me, let's transition into some of these. The goal here is to build a set of philosophies and core values around what should be happening in DHS offices going forward. So I'm going to write that down as the first one is casework. It's a whole picture of the person and the family and serving that way. What other ideas do people have?
Are we talking future journey now?
Yes, future journey map.
Because I would say she's clearly bright, articulate, she's computer savvy because she found out enough to do all this. If our digital experience was even remotely up to snuff, she'd have never been in the office. She should have been able to go put all that information in very easy to understand. If we needed to do an interview, she should have been able to choose a scheduled time that works for her schedule. Should have been outside 9 to 5 because she has 2 jobs. I'm not sure when she's even going to fit another interview in. And she should be in control of that. And then the other thing is she should be getting feedback in that process to reassure her that she's on the right path. I think the other problem, the reason I would submit she probably came into the office in the first place is because she just didn't trust anything and she wanted to talk to someone and make sure she was doing this right. It's her first time through the system. And I think if we had that digital thing, she'd never show up in the office at all.
Like an app.
Mm-hmm. And I would say digital all the way to the benefit. You know, one of the things we talked about was, did she get her needs met? Well, no, because her case wasn't certified. But at the end of the day, today, you still have to have a SNAP card. You still have to have a child care card. To be able to do any of those things, you still have to have some sort of benefits issuance. And that in and of itself can be a challenge.
You know, by looking at this through a world-class lens, one of the companies that could have been mentioned was Amazon. And I don't know about y'all, but I buy myself gifts every now and then. And it's like 10 stops away, 8 stops away, 6 stops away.
Yep.
And I think we might be able to communicate several things at once, where if it just showed, hey, you're eligible for all of these things, and it's green, 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 or red, 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 based on her profile, she'll see, oh, what's this thing that's not green that could be for me? And she could easily keep up with what's going on. Because I was also wondering, Did she have a vehicle? And I think the technology piece would solve that problem.
Absolutely. So what I heard there was product awareness, but I also heard some process awareness. Like as Amazon teaches you or tells you that you're 2 stops away. Like if you knew this is the next step in my journey, and there was a very clear articulation of that through technology, that would help.
One of the most frustrating things that we've noticed is the application comes in. We don't really do a very good job of managing your expectations about when exactly. When is the next step going to happen, and who is the human being that has this application in my hands?
I think in our defense for that, though, to your point, is that it's not consistent. So we can't do that today. And all of those companies that we started out by naming, why are they good? Every one of them, you know what you're going to get, and you're going to get the same thing every time. If I go to Chick-fil-A, that sandwich is going to be the same every time. The coffee is going to be the same temperature. Walt Disney is going to be exactly the same for your kids every single time you go, and we can't offer that because we don't have the structures in place to do that. So if you're in Muskogee, it's going to be different than if you're on the south side of Oklahoma City, and it just is. And so until we set those processes up and we have that consistency to offer, we can't really tell you where you're going to be.
But I think to a certain extent, that can be okay. You can have the consistency while still making it unique to that area. Because if you have rural Oklahoma, it's going to be different than Oklahoma. Your south side is going to be different than your northeast side, than your northwest side. So you still want some uniqueness and some community and some individuality about these places, so that it doesn't feel so institutionalized, like he said earlier. So you want some of that area, but you do want the process to be streamlined and consistent.
Be interesting to think about how to use, even if it was voluntary and you had to sort of agree to it, but to use push notifications, not just on sort of the process you've signed up for, but would there be a way to do push notifications for other services or partners or things that were happening in your community?
Well, so this is
we have your address, and so if you're interested in knowing there's a back to school event in your area and they're giving away backpacks, those kinds of things, could people sign up to have that stuff pushed to them?
Or is Julie a veteran? Because we're at DHS, we don't necessarily, that's not something that comes in our thing, but I'll bet she thinks she's going to the state, not DHS, because she doesn't care about agencies. Mm-hmm. And if she's a veteran, gosh, wouldn't it be nice if we also said, boom, you got some veterans benefits here as well. Yeah. And you started thinking not just in our agency silo, but started thinking more across the board.
Across the board state agency, and then across the community.
Oh, there you go.
If there's a way to push... like I said, information about what's available in the local community.
Yeah, I put community connected rather than just, in the walls of that building, the services there, and then horizontally integrated across all of the other potential agencies that and organizations. It's not just specifically state or municipal organizations, but any organization that can serve her needs all connected in one space.
But how do you create that space of trust so that they feel comfortable putting all of that information in one data? Because if they know it's horizontal over agencies, then if I have a ticket that I haven't paid because I don't have the income, is this gonna flag that? And then also another component is, can I add my grandparents' data to this? But I may not be their court-ordered guardian. I may not have a what is it called? I may not have the document. Oh my God, it's on the tip of my tongue. I may not have the document saying that I'm their primary care person, the power of attorney. Thank you. I may not have that document here, but can I enter their information so that we can see what resources the whole household can get? But also, is that too many resources in one household? Like, is there a certain cap on, these are my grandparents, they live with me, and I'm getting all these resources. Can I put them in the system? Can they get these resources too, or is that a no because I'm getting them?
And also,
that goes.
Yeah. And I was just gonna say, and also think about our grandparents. They have limited English. Are they documented?
That's what I was just gonna say too,
documented?
because we're not gonna feel comfortable sharing any of that.
The trust issue is fascinating, and what can you do to fix that is
Because it's systemic.
Well, and just because we can't, DHS, we cannot offer benefits, doesn't mean that we can't utilize community connections if we have trust. So there may be other spaces.
That's why I like the idea of I could opt in to receive information about, but nobody's making a referral on me, so to speak. So I don't know. Maybe it's better if there's the opportunity to make a referral. But if it's more of I'm opting in to receive information and then I choose what I'm going to engage with in
if
my
it was
community.
anonymous, would that build trust?
If it were anonymous, but how do you prove that something's anonymous? There's all sorts of anonymous things, and then all of a sudden it's not super anonymous. So
Another future state would be, our families, all of us go, our situations change. So, Julie loses her job, or she gets, she gets a new job, so she's off benefits for a while, but then her situation changes again. Does she have to go in the future state? I would hope she didn't have to go through everything all over again. Like, are there any pieces that can save her time in the future if she, if her situation changes, whichever direction it changes?
Yeah, how many times do they enter that
name and date of birth and address. And
Today,
Social
it's
Security
every
number.
time.
Right,
That's an
right.
interesting part because, like today, if you're applying through DHS Live,
create a profile?
we're gonna get as you're applying for SNAP, we're gonna capture all of your utility information, and then if it's also LIHEAP season, we're not gonna transfer that information over from the SNAP application into your LIHEAP application. You're gonna have to re-enter that exact same
We already gave you
information.
that. We
Right.
gave you that information.
We used it for something different, though.
Yeah, that's
Why,
Yeah,
why
that's right.
wouldn't I ask you for it?
Right,
Yeah.
right.
That's why I think the opt-in and the power piece is important to figure out, so that people there is some ability up front to sort of say, this is how I want my information used.
Okay, so we're about to wrap up the conversation, but let's wrap it up by thinking about those organizations that we started talking about. Chick-fil-A, Zappos, Amazon was brought up, and think about the elements of a world-class customer experience that you all brought to the table. In that, are all of those represented in this in these sort of core values that we've written on the wall here? Is there something that we've missed?
the built environment.
So we talked a lot about Julie's experience, but all of those other companies, people talked a lot about the employee, what makes it great to work there, which then in turn provides good customer service. So we didn't really touch much on that.
And how she's greeted now.
Yep.
How she's greeted, what those characteristics are, again, from that security guard, from that receptionist, all those things are changing. I think we touched on it a little bit with the tailored environment, but how do we extend to make those people comfortable in those environments?
Yeah. If it's Chick-fil-A, it's how may we serve you?
Mm-hmm.
If it's Disney World, there's some color in the room. And that's not expensive.
If it's Amazon, it's a great feedback as well. Great return policy, great feedback, convenience.
I had a package delivered the other day, and the email I got had a picture of the package on my front porch.
Yep.
I mean, it's pretty cool.
Okay, so we started to touch a little bit on the greeting and a little bit of the warmth, talking about the colors and those sorts of things. Just as we wrap up, think about the words you would use with the team. If you were talking to that AT3, or you're talking, hopefully at some point we don't have security guards with, the metal detectors, but you're talking to the person that greets Julie for the first time. And you're explaining to that person the culture of the agency that you represent, the organization, our organization, OKDHS. What are the words that you use to that person to tell them or to explain to them the warmth that we want to share with the people who walk in the door? How do you explain that? Kathy?
No, I was just saying let's wait because that's going to start beeping.
Oh, you're
Go
okay.
ahead.
Yeah, you're okay.
No, cut it.
Good.
Yeah.
It just makes a weird beeping noise the
You know,
whole time.
I think a lot of the hope language is really great to use when you're talking with staff and really the purpose behind the work that we do, that we're building, we're there to help people feel hopeful and to explain the pathways that we can help them. So I think really inspiring them to understand the impact, which I know they do, but just those type of words, if they're thinking about that in their interactions, like choose every word carefully about how you interact so that the person who leaves that building feels hope in that situation. And that's a powerful message to send to someone who's coming in and asking for help. And you can do that as a DHS employee. You can give people hope.
Those first impressions are critical.
Yep.
Yeah, I think I tell my people all the time, with great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah.
And for some people in some moments, we are the only pathway.
Right.
And so if you knew you were the only way for somebody to have their need met that day, how would you talk to them if they're calling or coming in or whatever that is? What does that look like? It's different than just, I'm at my job today, I do these things, I know it's for the greater good, but it's not personal every time.
I think too, as we look at how we serve others, the question also becomes, how do we as an entity serve those who are working with us, whether it be mental health, whether it be the things that they're struggling with that day, that they can't be their best selves for whoever's walking and coming to see them every single day. So it seems as if as we're looking at these things, that's a start, because they're going to be just as frustrated as Julie because nothing's working.
Right.
But if we take pride in how we treat them and how we make sure these things work for them, ask them how they're doing today, have incentives for them to be great and successful, make sure they are getting that proper promotion, make sure they are getting that proper salary. Those are all the things we need to take care of each other.
Yep.
And right now, in a lot of ways, unfortunately, when people think of DHS, that's not what we think of. We think of high the turnaround for employees.
I loved that you used the word proud.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is when you think about where they work today, because they come into that same metal detector, they come to that same building, they sit in that same place. And I love the idea as I listen to what we think these new physical locations could be. When I think about what our employees that work in this space now, how they did not feel pride 2 years ago working in the space we're sitting. And as an employee, I can tell you I am really proud of this place, and it makes me excited to come to work. I love to use the word pride, and I think that's one we could focus on for our staff especially.
Yeah. And there's this.
No way.
We're having a fire alarm.
No way.
I'm glad you're proud to be here.
Attention.
Guess
So,
who
as
hasn't
I mentioned,
updated the
there
fire
is-
alarm system?
Sequoia building. All occupants walk to the nearest stairway, exit the building, and proceed to
I'm
your
gonna text
designated
Russell. Hold on.
meeting location.
I'm sorry.
Use the elevator. Walk to the nearest stairway and
As I mentioned, there's lots of risk when you do experiences like this.
I thought you were so well.
Timing us.
Yeah, I thought you had a timer, and that was the end
Yeah,
of the
that-
session. I was going to be blown away.
persons in the concourse tunnels.
Could not have a speaker in here, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. The soundproof room has a fire alarm in it. Okay.
Probably has to.
Well, the timing is probably good, and honestly, we will probably include that in the show. I mean, this is a high risk, high reward podcast.
This is real life.
That's right, real life. So I wanted to really sort of wrap us up by saying the experience in a DHS office has changed a lot in the last 2 years or year and a half since pandemic. It is the opportunity for us to disrupt right now. We as an agency are disrupting in lots of spaces. We are building the technology that is extremely complex to layer in, but it is absolutely essential to developing an experience that our customers deserve. Our team is extremely committed to serving people in the right way. And they do that every single day. The systems are not built and developed to allow them to do that to the best of their abilities. So I want to make sure that it's clear this is now, whether there are people across an organization of 6,000 people that don't necessarily sort of have the same culture and philosophies that we are building as an agency, of course, but the team is extremely committed. And I do believe that this is an illustration of how you transform massive systems that otherwise seem to be so almost impossible to change, is by starting with conversations like this. And these conversations are happening all over the agency. But it's also important to note that the cynic may say, okay, we can talk all we want. What about action? And action is happening. This place is so big and so complex, it's hard to share all of the places that change is occurring, but it is occurring all over. And it's because of the willingness to have vulnerable conversations like this, and to not be defensive in certain spaces, to bring the stakeholders like you all, thank you for joining, and also to bring the voice of the community into the work that we're doing. So I'm really proud of this, of the progress that's been made. It's not just talk, it is action. And we have years of action to go. So we appreciate grace and understanding. I've used those words a lot in this podcast, but we do very much. I personally thank all of you for joining today. It's been a really good conversation, and really I think we have brought Julie into this, and she will forever impact the experience that 1 million Oklahomans have in county offices all across the state of Oklahoma. So with that, I say thanks again for joining the 1,000 Stories podcast, and we look forward to the next time we're together.